Hello everyone and welcome to this WDSS virtual talk, Data Science, a Retail Revolution. We're joined today by three excellent speakers from the global customer data science firm dunnhumby to talk about the impact of the company on the world of retail and of data science, and also the graduate life and opportunities available at the company. So I'm personally incredibly excited for WDSS to be hosting this talk. Although dunnhumby isn't quite a home name, its impact on the world of data science has been truly massive. It's almost impossible to pick up an introductory data science book that doesn't in some way reference dunnhumby or even have a whole section about it. And if anything, I see dunnhumby's kind of quiet impact as a testament to their ability to just get the job done, make amazing data science solutions without needing to resort to hype or charlatanism. So after hearing from our speakers, we're going to wrap up with a Q&A session. So make sure if you have any questions or want to learn more, you pop those in the chat as we go through, and we'll get to those at the end. As a matter of fact, we have the Global Early Careers Lead in this call, so it's a great chance to make a strong first impression and show your passion for data science and for dunnhumby. So with that, I'd like to pass over to Ben and Talia to kick off this talk.
Thank you very much, Tim, for that generous introduction, and thank you for having us on this session today. So myself and Talia, we're going to take you through some of the cool insights and things we do with data science at dunnhumby here. So let's just dive into it. So we'll take you through a few different aspects of what we do within the project we're working on at the moment. So where we actually get that data from. At the moment, it's currently coming from an app called WhoYou. We'll show you some examples of what that data looks like, and then we'll jump into some kind of some views on the way that we use that data within the data science view of it. Then we'll look at the data from a data as a service side and show you kind of where this data ends up along its journey. Then we'll finish off with some views on what the graduate perspective at dunnhumby looks like, and Mira will take you through some of the opportunities that we have here at dunnhumby. So just a bit of background for myself and Talia. So hello everyone, my name is Ben Sheridan. I have been at dunnhumby for just over 2.5 years, and I've joined dunnhumby into a project called WhoYou, and my role within this project is looking at all things data science. So where my data journey kind of started off in many moons ago, I did physics at university. I was always interested in finding out why things work and how they work. So that's where my curiosity in data kind of came from. But when I moved into kind of my first career role, it's always been on the data side of things. So started my career off in kind of data engineering, but recently I've had a lot more interest in kind of customer-centric view of data and actually getting useful information that's actually tangible for people rather than looking at systems and pipelines and things like that. And Talia has also joined in the call today. She has recently joined dunnhumby in September this year, and I won't give too much of an introduction at the moment, but Talia will take you through her background later on in a couple of slides' time. So just a bit of background on the project. Just on the last slide, you will have seen two kind of terms there. One was WhoYou and one was dunnhumby Beyond. And WhoYou is the connected data app that we use where we get all our data from. So just to get a bit of background on what this app actually is. So WhoYou it's an app where shoppers can share data in return for rewards and insights. So you can currently find this on the iOS App Store and Android Play Store. And it was a way that we wanted to let people share their data with us, but in some sense have ownership over that. So they're not just giving away data for free like you might find with most companies. We wanted to reward users for doing that. And in dunnhumby, the kind of data that we're interested in, especially within the WhoYou project, is things around grocery receipts and getting behavioral insight data from surveys. And also recently we've launched an aspect of the app where you can actually upload your online search and browse data. So the app was launched in July 2018, so just over 2 years ago. So far we've had over 5.5 million receipts uploaded in that time. We have 75,000 active users using the app across the various aspects that they can share data with us in. We have over 700,000 surveys completed so far. And within the grocery receipts that we collect the data from, you can see a list of them at the bottom here, which range from Tesco all the way over to Ocado. These are the receipts that we're interested in within the app, and it's where all of our kind of insights is based upon. And the reason we've chosen these ones, and you might see a few that are missing, like Iceland and Marks and Spencer's, for example, is because these retailers make up 95% of the market within the UK. So I just want to give a quick demo of what the application looks like, specific to the receipts and the survey side of things. So we'll just run through a couple of slides on what it might look like when you install the app. So user downloads the app and they'll get a few onboarding screens, and it will take them through the kinds of things that they can do within the app and the types of data that they can share. Of course, they need to fill in the agreement to terms and conditions, quite important with GDPR these days. And the first activity you can see at the moment is the receipt scanning. So when you want to scan a receipt, you click on the receipt scanning item, you can upload a receipt. We currently use Google's OCR vision application, which will digitize the text from an image. User is just reviewing that image at the moment. Now we're uploading it to our servers, and then we get the digitized text back in the back end. User gets their points, and then they can start looking at their insights as well. And as they upload more receipts, they'll get more insights about the kinds of things that they're shopping in. The next activity a user can do is completing surveys. So this is quite important for us for the behavioral attitudinal side of the data, which we're very keen on using with different segmentations. So you can just see a user completing one of the surveys that we offer in the app at the moment. Quite straightforward. User completes it, and they should get some more points as well. Let's just pause there. There's a few other activities you can do within the app, but I won't jump into them today. So good opportunity for you guys to go off and investigate it in the App Store and download it. So if I give a bit of background on the actual data that we collect off the back of those activities. So as you saw, the user was uploading a receipt. This is, I'm sure everyone's familiar with a grocery receipt, but on the right-hand side, you have an example of what that looks like. And the boxes highlighted in green here are the ones that we're quite interested in actually extracting and digitizing. So things we're interested in are the retailer name, the store name and address detail, all of the product details you see, so the product name, product price, product quantity as well if it's available, the total spend that the user spent within store, and the shop date and shop time. And as everyone's aware, there's been quite a shift to online shopping since the lockdown within the UK. And a lot of retailers have shifted to online grocery services. So recently we've started to collect e-receipts as well. The survey data is something that we're quite interested in as well. When you join the app, we offer quite a few different surveys for you to fill in. From our perspective, these are really useful in creating customer segmentations. So a few you see on the left-hand side here, the demographic survey, food and drink survey, loyalty scheme and promotions, and so on. These are all kind of standard surveys that will get asked to all users. But as you continue to use the app and as you continue to upload receipts, you will get targeted with more surveys specific to your activity. So far we've offered just over, I think it's about 185 surveys in total, and that we've had 700,000 surveys completed so far. And the good thing about this app is it's very user-friendly. The users that are using it at the moment, they're very keen on kind of earning their points and sharing their data with us. Just to give a bit of background on what an application of this nature might look like. Obviously, myself and Talia are focused on the data analytics and data science side of things. But here, this diagram just shows you the kind of the width and breadth of what a project of this looks like. So on the far left here, we see the user side of stuff. So where the data comes in, we've got the app on the mobile device here. We've got different aspects of processing that data as it comes in. So we've got survey data, we've got online browsing data, we've got the process that deals with the receipts data. That all feeds through our systems, and then we need to do a lot of processing and cleaning of it as well. So I'm sure most people are aware that data science is not all of the pretty side. There's a lot of data cleaning involved, and you can see that there's quite a large portion of this diagram involved with actually cleaning data. Up at the top here is kind of where the science side of things fits in. So one of the main aspects of data that we're very focused on at the moment is actually getting the information out of that receipt that helps us answer these questions. So big aspect of that at the moment is translating that item level data into product level data that you might find on a retailer's website, for example. And then ultimately, we're not just doing this for fun, where we want to share the insights that we find with clients and brands. So there's a whole aspect of our project that evolves around kind of translating these insights and answering the questions that clients have with us, and that'll be in the top right hand side here. So we've got various dashboards that focus on the data that comes out of it. We use a variety of tools at the moment. So dunnhumby itself, it's a Python shop. Pretty much anyone that's using data in dunnhumby will be using Python in some format. And within our project, we use it in a few different ways. So to make things easier for us, we use a few different front-end dashboards. So we use Dash, we use GCP Data Studio, and when we're playing around with data, we mostly do that in Jupyter Notebooks. And quite recently, we've been playing with a few more tools. So Microsoft Power BI is one that we're just testing out at the moment. So just to give you guys an idea of a couple of the projects that we're currently working on within our project at the moment, we'll take you through, at a pretty high level, the ways that we use data science and apply it to the specific problems that we're dealing with, especially within the receipts data that you will have seen just previously. So if I can just draw your attention to the right-hand side here. So this is what a receipt looks like when you have a transaction in store. What we're really interested in is translating the item level data you see here into actual products that you would find within a retailer's hierarchy. So some of these are pretty self-explanatory at the moment. So you can see this is a co-op receipt, and this person has purchased courgettes, purchased sweet corn. I'm not too sure what that third one was, and that fourth one I'm not too sure either. So you can see just on that one receipt, there's two items that we're not too sure on, and you can imagine, that there are quite a few receipts uploaded each week. We get about 600,000 item strings appearing each week in our data. 87,000 of those we've never seen before. So we've got a lot of processing to do to kind of translate that raw receipt level data into what actual products that they relate to. Over the past 2 years or so, we've attempted this with various methods. One that we've pretty much focused on for most of those 2 years so far has been with Elasticsearch. We started back in 2018, and with various implementations and testing and different analysts on the team, we've worked out what works well, what doesn't work so well, and ultimately what we've decided to do is shift away from Elasticsearch to be towards more of a focus on using Python and the packages within that's offered within Python. So the reason mainly for that is not necessarily from a coding side of things. It's more on how we actually deal with this type of data and this quantity of data within a production level environment. So for us, you can see a couple of the main features of why this is important. So the speed to be able to process that data is really important. The accuracy of the matching for the items to products is really important. The knowledge on how to do these things is really important. So we want to make sure we've got people in the team that know how to tune these different algorithms and the way that we've implemented it. And also maintainability is quite important as well. So it's no good if you've got this running on your own PC. We need to get it running on a cloud server across multiple different locations. So these are the main reasons why we switched away from using Elasticsearch. It was becoming an old technology for us. There were not many people in the company who were able to kind of help us out with this because it was dying technology effectively. And given that quite a lot of us are keen Python users, we've focused on using it as using Python to actually process this kind of data. So I'll talk a bit about how we've done it with the item to product matching. We've gone with the TFIDF route. So for those who don't know, TFIDF is a algorithm used quite commonly in text processing. And what it stands for is term frequency inverse document frequency. And what it's really good at is finding the importance of a specific term in a document of data. So where you might have seen it used before is in spam detection in emails in the early days of the web. What we actually use it for is trying to identify specific products from the items that come off of the item level receipt that come off of the receipts. So one thing that's really important for us is getting the balance between the relevance of a term and the frequency of that term appearing. So to give an example of this, if you were looking at film reviews, you might see words like character or actor or cinema pop up quite frequently, but they're going to pop up across all film reviews. Whereas if you're looking at two different films, let's say Lord of the Rings and Toy Story, you might find specific words in Lord of the Rings like Frodo or Bilbo Baggins that you would not necessarily find in Toy Story. So where it's useful for us is it helps us distinguish the key terms in items against the list of products that we give it. Obviously, within data science, one solution does not fit all. So there's a few different ways that we have to tweak this, and we apply different methods on top of this as well. But at the moment, I'm just going to focus on the TF-IDF side of things. So just to give an example of what this might look like with some real data that we've been playing around with. On the left-hand side here, you can see a list of items that have come off of Sainsbury's receipts. So these are the actual strings that you will have seen on the receipt. We need to be able to match them to actual items that Sainsbury's sells within its store. So there's a few here that are pretty obvious to the human to understand, but we need to do this in a programmatic and systematic way. So what we've done with our implementation is, instead of the standard TF-IDF process where we try and look at keywords, we want to look at key substrings of characters. So from our testing, what we find is a n-gram of n equals 3 is worked best for our processing. And what we do is we split up the strings into n-grams of 3. Then we apply those to the list of products that come from Sainsbury's. We apply the vectorizer to train the model against the Sainsbury's products. Then we transform it against the items that come through on the receipts. And from that, each of the matches will get a score. What we want to do is find which of those matches gives the best score. So in this case that you see on screen at the moment, for the item string that appeared on the receipt, JS sets them as 600 grams. We want to find out what was the best match for that against products within Sainsbury's. So doing a few lines of code, we get to this product that you see on the bottom here. So with this implementation of TFIDF, the item string JS Satsuma is 600 grams matches best in our data to seriously good to Satsuma's mini treats. That's not to say that that's the correct item, but from our tests so far, what we find is it's pretty good, and there's plenty of room for us to improve upon this with human labeling tasks and things like that. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of some more items that we've applied, comparing the TF-IDF approach with the original approach that we looked at with Elasticsearch. So on the first column here, you see a list of products that came through from the receipts, what they've actually mapped to in our TF-IDF approach, and what they were originally matching to with the Elasticsearch. So the ones in green are what we would classify as pretty good matches, and the ones in red are clearly incorrect. So for one example here is a 10-pack of caged eggs has matched to a packet of 10 packet of batteries, which clearly is incorrect. So it's quite this area within our team, it's quite an interesting challenge for us. We'll never solve it completely, especially when we've got lots of new item strings coming in. We need to constantly make sure that we feed back any features and matches that we do find into the corpus of data to make sure that we can pick those up again and any variants of those as well. So now I'm just going to hand it over to Talia, who will take you through another example of data science that we've used within our project. So Talia, over to you.
Hi, so I'm going to talk to you a bit about the transaction level price cleaning, which is my first project I actually did within the team. So what you can see on the right are a list of total prices spent that we get from the OCR when we're looking at different receipts. As you can see, that we're getting people spending about 7 billion in one transaction, which probably not correct. So what we want to do is we want to come up with a way of cleaning these prices up. Often what the reason we're getting these problems is because the OCR is incorrectly reading the wrong part of the receipt. So it could be reading something like an EAN number, which you get quite often on like ASDA receipts and things like that. So the reason why it's really important for us to clean all of this is because of any kind of research that relies on the kind of like total basket spend. So looking at identifying the price sensitivity of a user, looking at market share for each retailer requires us to use this kind of like data. And unfortunately, you can't really look at using like combining the item level price data to get a final transaction level price, because of the fact that you also get variances in terms of like the prices we get coming off receipts as well for items. So it's not a reliable method. Instead, we're looking at ways of improving what we can't necessarily improve on the OCR because that's quite expensive. We're looking at using science to improve further down the stream. We can look at the next slide. So the approach that we used, or that I came up with, is that the data that we get for transaction level prices is log normally distributed. If you can see the graph at the top right, that shows you what the kind of distribution looks like. So what we did was normalize the data, and that allows us to use the interquartile range to define like an upper bound for these kind of like outliers that we're getting. And we get this upper bound for each store type within each retailer. The reason we do that is because obviously people tend to spend different amounts in different kind of stores. So people are more likely to spend more on fewer products inside, say, a Tesco Express, because they're often buying things like wine, ready meals, stuff like that, in comparison to like a standard weekly shop where they might be buying more, but the cost per item tends to be lower. So what we did is we calculated a median spend for each user in each store type within each retailer. So as a kind of like a proxy for what we think they might be spending in that transaction. Unfortunately, there are certain times we can't really calculate a median. It might be that they've never shopped in that particular store type with that particular retailer before. It might be that those other transactions we've had come from them before have also been outliers. So it's not a reliable kind of way of telling what they've spent. And in that case, we developed a linear regression model that is used to predict the value. So the linear regression model that I've designed, which you can see on the right, is based on the total basket size, the retailer, and also the price sensitivity of the user. So price sensitivity is basically how willing are they to carry on buying a product if it goes up in price. So say something went up by 50p, or a pound, how likely are they to carry on buying that item? And that's a metric that we generate by all through the surveys that we carry out. And we have that kind of listed for each user. You can see on the code on the right, basically what I did is I stripped out all of the outliers from our data. I got the total basket size, the retailer, and the price sensitivity of those users. And then I used that to train my linear regression model. I then took the outlier results that we identified and passed that through the linear regression model. And that allowed us to get our predicted values. If you could see the next slide. So that's all well and good, but actually this is something we need to productionize because this is going to be part of our internal filtering system. So things that you really need to look at are making things easier not only for yourself when you're looking at a project, not only the other data scientists, but especially the data engineers in your team who are actually going to have to implement this and productionize it. So what you should really be looking at is sticking to a coherent and consistent structure for your code. So things like making sure your imports, the first thing that pretty much that you see, having kind of like a nice structure with like headings and things like that breaks things down into a logical way, especially looking at things like converting as much of your code into functions. So having a function with a easily identifiable name, like it tells you basically what it does on the tin, is really useful. Especially if that code is then reused later in a script, or you want to reuse it again in another script, because it allows you to just easily import that code. And also by running it already in a script, it allows you to, it stores that on memory, and therefore it's really easy to for it to be run again. So you're actually improving your processing speed. Lastly, it was kind of always stray on the side of too much documentation rather than not enough. You can see all of my text that I've got on this code. So I've got headings, I've put markdown in, I've got doc strings for all of my functions that tell you kind of the arguments and what you get out of it. I've also commented on pretty much every single line of my code, which may be slight overkill, but at least it means that if I come back to this at a later date and someone has questions for me, or I have to hand this off to somebody else when I leave the team, then it means that they know at least how to work, what it works, like what everything does. They can kind of make any changes if they need it to. So yeah, that's kind of the main things around productionization. Is also another thing is looking at this script runs on 4 weeks of data. So what we found is actually I compared using 4 weeks of data to calculate these medians. I compared it to using 3 months of data and then 6 months of data, and actually found that there isn't really a kind of like meaningful difference between those results. And therefore, always going with like a smaller amount of data is actually better. It improves like productionization, makes it a lot faster to process, but it's also just a lot simpler to deal with. And also in certain cases, it means you don't have to hold on to data for as long, which is in certain cases for things like GDPR and how often long you can store data, actually minimizing the amount of data you need to use is something that's pretty good. So yeah, I'll pass it back off to Ben now to carry on chatting.
Cool, thank you very much, Talia. So the next section that we want to talk to you guys about is the insights and data as a service side of our project. So it's all well and good and interesting to look at this kind of data and approach these problems, really interesting problems to solve, but what's the reason that we do that? there has to be some other reason. So let me just jump to the next slide. So the reason why we kind of do this stuff is we, as analysts, are here to kind of translate the raw data into insights to help people understand whatever it is they're looking at. So in this case, what we focus on is translating that raw data from consumers shopping in different different grocery retailers, specifically into different categories within those retailers, and ultimately with purchasing different brands within those categories. So what we do as a team and as a company within dunnhumby is try and solve those questions for our clients and CPGs. So on screen is just a couple of examples of things that we've been working on the kind of delivery side of our project, on where does this data ultimately end up and what kinds of insights and views do we try to create from it. So on the top left-hand side here, you can see a few different segmentations that we've created of the users. Primarily, this comes from the survey data. So the users complete the surveys within the app and then goes through all of those pipelines that you saw earlier. And then from that, combined with other data that we've got within the app, so receipt data, for example, we combine that to create these segmentations. So top left here, you've got a life stage, which tells you it's basically a segmentation which tells you the age and what stage of family life you are within your life. On the top right here, we've got a affluent segmentation. So it tells you how affluent you are as a consumer. Are you more conscious about price when you shop, or do you prefer to buy the more expensive products? One thing that we haven't touched on too much at the moment is the store format. So if you remember back to the receipts, we capture store name and some store address details. What we try and do is, using some data coming off Google's map algorithm, or sorry, Google Maps API, is find out which store that specific retailer relates to. This is quite good if we want to split up spend within different formats as well. And then on the bottom right here, we've got the online journeys. So another aspect of our app is the online search and browse data, which is all around what users do when they're browsing online. We're specifically interested in kind of shopping and grocery behavior, and what ways do you do that shopping when you're online. So for example, what we're interested here is if you were to purchase a online shop from Tesco.com, for example, what type of way do you do that process? So are you a consider type shopper? It's where you create your basket in one session, but you might go off to Google to kind of Google nutritional detail on some of the products that you're interested in. Or are you a distracted type shopper where you do that across multiple sessions? So you might start on a Monday, but you might pick it up again on a Wednesday. Or are you focused type consumer? So you do everything in one session and you just stay exclusively on Tesco.com in this example. Or are you a leisurely type online shopper where you're kind of not fussed on when you want to complete that basket or where you might search for your information. And on the top right hand side here, we go into that in a little bit more detail on when you do browse and shop online, what way do you arrive at those websites and what kinds of questions might you be asking when you're doing searches on Google, for example. So especially with the recent lockdowns within the UK, we've seen a massive shift to online shopping. So anything that we can get in this space is going to help out our clients massively. And especially when we've got the kind of connected data layer view of grocery shopping within store, surveys and behavioral data, combined with the online search and browse data, it helps us get a more holistic view of what those consumers are doing. So just a couple of questions that have popped up in various projects before. Which websites are shoppers of my product more likely to use? Which sites are they most likely to come from when they're visiting my product pages? How much research do they do when they do shop online? Do they actually do research online but purchase offline, or do they purchase in store? What are the main search terms that they do to find the specific products? If they end up if they end up abandoning a basket, so if you're on Tesco.com and you're creating your basket and then decide to disappear for a week or so, where have you gone in that time that you've disappeared? Because that's quite a key bit of insight that clients are really interested in, is what stopped you from making that purchase at that moment. What are the common types of journeys that shoppers are making, which refers to the online journeys diagram on the left-hand side here. How do shoppers use the different channels? So do you shop online? Do you just do research online? Do you purchase in store? Do you do your research in store or purchase online? So there's loads of different ways you can actually find information out about a product, but where you actually end up purchasing it can be completely different. And then we've got a view on kind of when you do go online, what kinds of things do you do? Are you more interested in news sites? Or are you more interested in Facebook and Instagram? Or are you more interested in kind of gaming sites as well? So that's quite an important aspect when we come to targeting and advertisement for specific clients as well. Bottom left here is another type of product that we've been creating off of this data that we're taking in from the users. It's a way to look at specific categories and what kinds of change do we see across key metrics within that category. So on the example you see on screen at the moment, if we were to look at the beer and lager category, and specifically within the within Aldi, what does the change look like for specific metrics? So here we've got customers, we've got spend per customer, customer penetration, purchase frequency, spend per visit, and so on. What does that look like within Aldi, and how might that compare if we were to look at this across all different retailers? And this kind of view is something that clients are really interested in, because it kind of gives them a holistic view of all things that they might have seen previously, but without this connected view of what do the shoppers who purchase Aldi products within this category, for example, what do they actually do when they browse and search online? And on the bottom right here, we've just got a couple more things that we're developing in the background here. And market intelligence is another thing that we're really keen on. So understanding the market from the data that we've got uploaded on the app. And as you know, the receipts that we accept within the app, they cover the grocery market up to 95%. So we should have a pretty good view of what's going on in the grocery market. So here, this chart in the top left, let me try and zoom in for a second. So you can see this chart is from pretty much the start of 2020, and there's a few key metrics on here. So we've got items per basket, we've got average item price, and we've got purchase frequency. And you can see that something weird happens around mid-March. And as we all know, it's when pandemic kicked off in the UK. So one thing that you can see clearly from data is that behavior of consumers has changed massively. And that's what we see. And it's good to back that up with actual data. Just a few more examples of how we actually use the data, specifically within the kind of pandemic situation we're in at the moment. What way does user behavior and trends change over time? So on the bottom left, you've got a view on switching. So where do we see most people switching their spend? And as we know, with the lockdown, we're restricted in our movements. So we can see that within our data as well. So people were less likely to shop within the large superstores and more likely to shop online or actually go to the smaller convenience stores that might be on the corner of their street. Oops. So if I just hand it back over to Talia, who will take you through her perspective so far on life at dunnhumby. So Talia, over to you.
Great. If we could go to the next slide. So a little bit of an introduction about myself. So I studied biology at undergraduate Imperial, and had no real interest in data science whatsoever at that point. It wasn't until my final year with my dissertation, the things that I've really enjoyed at uni have been like genetics and stuff like that, ecology, and I found this project that used machine learning in but with genetic data, and it just really fascinated me. I ended up doing that as my dissertation, and really enjoyed it, and I kind of wanted to do more stuff like that. So my supervisor suggested I went on did a master's course that he taught, or he taught on. So that's what I did. I ended up doing a master's in basically computational biology with a weirdly long name. And at a certain point during that, I kind of we were all kind of like chatting about what we wanted to do, and I kind of figured out that actually all this data stuff was the thing that I was really interested in. I liked biology, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I decided to pursue a career in data science. It took a long time to find somewhere. As most people probably know, it's not been easy to find a job with COVID. I was really lucky that I applied to dunnhumby, which is a company that really fascinated me, especially kind of like the customer first ethos that the company has. It's something that really goes well with how I kind of view the world and things like that. And I was lucky enough to get through an assessment day during lockdown, did it all online, and I joined in September, joining the Who You Beyond team. I've unfortunately never been to our offices. This is where I work. It's been a really good time. So if you go to the next slide. So a little brief overview of the graduate scheme. So it's an 18-month scheme. It's split up into 3 rotations of 6 months, and you spend those within different teams. You kind of have regular insight sessions as well. So that allow you to kind of learn more in depth about different teams within the company. It really helps you kind of figure out what teams you want to work on next, maybe, and things that really interest you. And they've also got loads of professional development initiatives. So they really help with like presentation skills and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of access to kind of learning resources. And the great thing is that actually is a guaranteed position at the end. So I actually have a job to carry on doing at the end of this. So it's great. But what's it actually like being on the scheme? It's getting to know a wide breadth of data science applications is really great, especially with the fact you're supporting learning new techniques, platforms, coding languages. Before I joined, I already knew Python and R, which is a good basis, but I'd never learned SQL. I didn't know anything about like Google Data Studio or really much about BigQuery or Google data platforms and all of that kind of stuff. And I learned all of that within like my first like 2 months I've been with the team. So there's always like opportunities to learn. Another great thing is that you're given responsibilities from day one. So pretty much from day one, the project that I explained to you was the project I was working on. It was my shepherding it all the way from the idea of using linear regression, which amazingly is something I learned on my master's course. So actually the stuff you learn in uni is useful. But it was something that I got to shepherd all the way through to kind of helping talk over with the data engineers about how to productionize it and things like that. So I really felt like another member of the team, and it really helped me develop into a more rounded data scientist. I've kind of got experience in visualization and also like the kind of more statistical side, the actual coding, and then actual kind of like how does it work in like a greater kind of like business scheme as well. And another great thing about dunnhumby is kind of really collaborative and supportive working environment. It's not just within our teams, but there's also loads of opportunities to get to know other people within the company. So I've joined the green team within dunnhumby, which is a sustainability group. And I just get to chat to loads of people. Doesn't matter if they're commercial, really high up, grads like me. It's kind of a really great way of meeting other people. And you're always invited to kind of chat to people, get to know a bit more about the company and what they do. So if we go to the next slide. So kind of what is life like as a graduate in data science just in general? I would say prepare for very varied work. So it doesn't matter. It could be that you like coding. You will not just be doing coding in data science. It's just not what it's like. It's loads of kind of coming up with ideas, research of different like methodologies, things like that. Actually applying those methodologies, figuring out how connecting all of like cleaning all of your data. Data preparation is a major part of pretty much any project. It's a bit tedious, but you kind of have to get used to it. All the visualization, showing actually what your process does, and using that to explain to other people, whether that's in your team or to stakeholders, clients, and things like that, is something that you kind of have to get used to. It's a much bigger role than you kind of necessarily think of. Also, embracing constant learning. You're constantly going to be learning more. At the moment, Python is the biggest kind of like language used in data science. It may not always be, and that might change in the next 5 years, 10 years, but at some point you may have to learn a new language. You'll probably, in fact, you will have to learn a new language. And so you kind of have to always constantly be ready to learn new things, new techniques, new methodologies. Another thing, prepare to get to know your field. You may not know it going in much about the grocery sector. I didn't really know much about the grocery sector, but I've already learned a lot within the first 2 months. I didn't know price sensitivity with this as a thing, and then I had to work on using that data in my first project. Kind of all the different ways that you kind of companies segment their customers is all stuff I didn't really think about at all as like a customer myself. So you kind of get ready to know a lot of in depth about your field, because otherwise you can't really make any useful insights for your clients. You have to kind of understand what your data means, what all of those patterns mean, for you to do anything useful with that data. So that the science side of it is nothing without kind of like the actual applications of that science. And also be ready to be unafraid. Asking help often is kind of like a worrying thing to do, but it is something that you'll constantly have to do within data science. You, the kind of whether it's asking people on your team, just googling stuff. Stack Exchange is like the world's best website, and you'll constantly kind of be asking questions, but also be unafraid to speak up and say if you have an idea, if you have a suggestion. That's really often what data science companies want you to do. They want to grow and carry on evolving, and actually you coming in with fresh ideas is something that they're really looking for. So yeah, I'll pass on now to Mira.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Talia. Hopefully you can all hear me. So I'll just very briefly introduce myself. So my name is Mira Pankania and I look after our early careers programs here at dunnhumby. And I'm just going to give you a very quick summary of the opportunities that we have on offer for 2021. Ben, if you want to change the slide, if that's okay. Great. So this might look a little bit small, but I think Tim will share this flyer out with you at the end. So what we have are kind of two different options depending on what year you are studying in at the moment. So summer internships are for our penultimate year students, and this is an 8-week program spent in one specific team. And this can be done in one of 3 different streams, so commercial, engineering, and of course, most importantly, data science. And then we have for final year students, if you're in your bachelor's or doing your master's, we have a graduate program. And as Talia mentioned, it's an 18-month program, it being able to explore three different teams, depending on which of those 3 streams you applied for. Applications are due to open soon, so you are not late to the party at all. We haven't actually opened just yet, but I'm more than happy to share with Tim a link to apply when we are open, and that should be next week. So yeah, again, happy to answer any questions, obviously in the next 10 minutes, or I'll provide Tim my details if you'd like to have a one-to-one conversation about opportunities. So yeah, I'll hand over to Tim.
I think you're on mute there, Tim.
I am, thank you. Sorry, I was on mute there. So I'd like to start by thanking everyone for offering their time to share a bit about dunnhumby, about their own experiences. I'll remind everyone that if they have any questions, please pop them in the YouTube chat and we'll get round to those. As those are coming in, I've prepared a few questions of my own. I'd like to start by asking Ben a bit about how the insights that can be generated by Project Beyond, especially with having access to data from multiple supermarkets, differ to the sort of insights you'd get from maybe a loyalty card for only one supermarket.
Very good question, Tim. So that's one of the main benefits of the WhoU environment itself is we have this kind of full market view on what people are shopping in across pretty much the whole market. So Tesco with their Clubcard, or Sainsbury's, Waitrose, and so on with their different loyalty schemes, they're only going to have data that's specific to those customers themselves. Where WhoU is really good is we've got a view on where people are shopping and how much they actually shop across retailers, which you'd be surprised to know that people tend to cross shop quite a lot. You can probably guess from your own experience, you're probably not accustomed to just one specific retailer. You probably shop at a couple over a couple of weeks, 3 months, 3 weeks or so. So WhoU is really good in the sense that we can see you might purchase small convenience food in Co-op, for example, but you might do your large weekly shop in Tesco. And with our data, we can see that kind of behavior and get a more holistic view of what customers are actually purchasing and where.
Brilliant, thanks. So now I have a question for Talia, kind of about transitioning from university into working as a data scientist. And specifically, I wanted to ask about kind of what sort of things you've had to learn, kind of how dunnhumby has supported you in learning that, and if there was anything that you wish you'd learned before starting working.
I guess the main ways that dunnhumby is really supported is that they kind of really kind of like having a project when I came into the company, kind of like, and they're like, hey, you can go away for like a couple of days and just learn SQL, which I'd always planned to learn. Never got around to doing it all through lockdown. I had a book on my table to learn it, didn't learn it. And actually the kind of like the opportunity to really not only have it kind of really gave me the initiative to actually learn it. I suddenly had to do a project using it, and in fact have had to carry on using SQL all the way through my past 2 months. And actually that opportunity kind of really to push me into actually doing it. But another thing is kind of looking at things like the data visualization stuff, which I'd done a bit of at university, but at university it's always very kind of utilitarian. It's not very something that you'd necessarily want to show to other people other than like a tiny little graph and a dissertation. Whereas actually, if you're looking at doing stuff for companies, but even internally, there's been dashboards that I've created using Google Data Studio, which not only get passed within our team, get passed out to other teams and stuff like that. So you've really got to kind of be learning more about presentation and all of that kind of stuff, data security, all of those things that you kind of, when you're working in the university, all gets taken care of for you in many respects. And actually, you're suddenly the bastion of people's data. You've got to look after it and kind of be more sensible with the way you use it. And actually, that's kind of a really nice learning curve. It kind of really makes you think more about actually what does this data mean. It actually means other people, other customers. And so that's been really enjoyable to learn.
Brilliant, thanks. And so now a question for Mira from the chat about whether the grad programme is restricted to UK nationals and whether there's any opportunity to move between teams in different locations and different offices.
Yeah, currently, just because of restrictions in place with COVID, that does mean that it is a little bit more difficult to move around at the moment. But one of the benefits has been, and hopefully Talia might have been able to see this is we are kind of working more collaboratively with colleagues that are across the globe. So Ben and Talia might have colleagues based in India or other locations. And I think probably since March, we've been working more collaboratively with our kind of global counterparts. And in terms of the first part of the question at the moment, these are everything I've kind of talked through was about our UK programs, but we do sometimes have programs coming up in other countries as well. So I would say having a look on the website or just dropping me a message and we can have a chat.
Yeah, great. And we'll make sure that on our socials, we'll be linking to all kind of details and any way to contact. So please do keep an eye on our socials for more information. And so another question for Mira. Obviously, a lot of online working at the moment, but it'd be good to know kind of when people are starting going back into the office, kind of where are the dunnhumby offices located and kind of what is kind of the working environment like there?
Yeah, so we have offices in Hammersmith and also in Manchester. So if we're looking at the data science tracks for internships or graduate schemes, that would be our Hammersmith office. Hopefully we can all get back into offices soon, but hopefully Talia and Ben, if you've got any comments. But in terms of our culture and working, I think we very, very much focus on collaboration. It's one of our dunnhumby values. So working together is definitely important, but also I think we have quite a work hard, play hard culture. Like we definitely enjoy our time off when, after working. So we have got some really good perks like early finish Fridays and which are great.
Yeah, if I could just add that I was lucky enough to work in the office before lockdown hit. Talia joined in September, so been working from home since. I think just to add that the office life itself, it's a very open environment. You'll be working on a specific project, but there will be teams of other people who will be focusing on other aspects of data or science itself. But it's so easy to just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, check out this problem I'm working on at the minute. Can you have a look and see if we can try and think about it a bit differently?" Everyone is so helpful and open to actually helping solve problems, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we do as a company, is try and solve problems, and to do that on your own is pretty much impossible. But the kind of work environment within dunnhumby makes it a lot easier to work with others. Within our team specifically, it's a global team, so we would work with people within the UK. We've got folks in India, and we've got some guys in Portugal as well. So there's a lot of collaboration involved and a lot of video conferences and things like that. So there'll never be a dull day when you're working on projects like this.
Great, thanks. And so a question for Talia. WDSS is an incredibly interdisciplinary society, and so it's very inspiring to see someone go from a background in biology to become more interested in data science. So I just wanted to ask kind of whether you feel that kind of having a background in biology has given you any kind of particular or unique skills that kind of help you in doing data science.
I guess one of the good things is I'm used to using really unclean data. Biological data is often really not very clean, especially if you're looking. Genetic data tends to be a bit better, but ecological data, which is a lot of the stuff that I used in throughout kind of like my masters especially, is very dirty. You've got a lot of data cleaning to do, and I guess that's kind of something that it's really lucky that I kind of got used to doing all of that, and all of like kind of like doing test visualizations to make sure actually that is a kind of pattern that you're looking for and stuff like that, because otherwise things like looking for the kind of like that log normal pattern that I found within our like sales, the total price data and all that kind of stuff is stuff that I think part of the reason that I noticed that kind of stuff is because of the fact that I've been used to using such dirty data and all of this kind of like looking at outliers and stuff like that. I've gotten very used to kind of that mindset because of biological data. I guess it also helped that coming from a science background, but not necessarily a data science background, it gave me more of an idea of looking at the holistic kind of view of things. So not just looking at the data, but looking at the kind of like taking a step back and looking at companies aren't necessarily an organism, or like customers aren't, but looking at like kind of behavior in that way is something that I think that actually is very applicable to data science. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But I'm going to make sure that on our socials, we're posting kind of any more information that these three speakers provide, and any contact details if you have any further questions after this talk. So once again, massive thank you to everyone for watching, and these three speakers for offering their excellent insight. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.